Let's get the show started. Welcome everybody, special edition live from Miami Beach. First of all, before we get started, I want to thank Mark Gomes for lending out his apartment balcony over here. He's actually out of his apartment right now, but he may be joining us towards the end of the show. So just want to put that out there first before we get started. So tonight we'll do a quick overview of what story trading is. Then we'll have Bob Ferris from VirTra Inc., VTSI, given a short presentation followed by Q&A. And we'll jump into our trade of the week as usual. Trade of the month update, which is incredible. People are doing great with that. And this week's picks. So those of you, we did a free preview tonight for people who are in Mark Gomes Pro Room. So we'll tell you what the upcoming agenda is scheduled for the VIP community over at Story Trading, and we'll let you know about a special offer in case you want to join and become part of the VIP community. We'll also may be going a little bit over time just to see if Mark can come back and give his thoughts on VTSI towards the end of the show. His due in maybe around right at 10 o'clock, we'll see. So quick disclaimer, Story Trading is not an investment advisor. Investing in securities involves significant risk of loss. Parts of this presentation will be recorded wherever indicated. We are recording now, and we may be using that publicly to get the word out about story trading. So what is story trading? Story trading levels the playing field with Wall Street insiders through crowdsourced collaboration, uncovering the hidden story behind the trade, access to management like we're seeing tonight on our VIP show. We are building our own app, roughly July release timeline for that. All right. Rob, if you want to go over, so far our featured presentations have had an incredible track record. Give us a quick update on that, Rob.
No problem. Yeah, the featured presentations have been doing amazing. We're up 66% just in the last 4 months. And the people that come up with the conviction, confidence, and research to give a presentation are just doing outstanding. Our biggest loss is 11%, but that's just because it was presented last week. And our largest gain is 223%. Dan Carlson is just picking some stunning stocks.
One and two
That's
positions.
Atomera. That's the microprocessor stock. And then second is INMB, also by Dan Carlson. They could have a possible cure for Alzheimer's. And then GMGI is the gambling stock, up 110% by Brad. And then Sultan with BCRX and Florian with Unity, and like overall track record is very good, 66%.
Awesome. Thank you for that update, Rob. Now, before we get started with Bob Ferris, first I want to thank Charlie Schumacher from Gateway IR. Has been hooking us up with some good presentations from companies. He was also one that set us up with Identiv, INBE, which has been a great investment for a lot of us. So thank you very much, Charlie, for setting that up. Before we introduce Bob, I just want to throw up a poll. When we do have CEO guest presenters come, we throw up a pre-poll and post-poll to get a sense of how useful this presentation was for our community. So Stephen, if you can launch that poll real quick.
Yep, launching it right now.
Yep, and all this is collected anonymously. How familiar are you with the VTSI story? 1 through 5, 1 not familiar at all, 5 very familiar, and are you currently a shareholder of VTSI? All this is anonymous. We appreciate maximum participation so we can, again, give that data over to the company so they can gauge how these presentations help them get the word out. Let's just add 1 minute max. We'll cut it off another 12 seconds there, or 20 seconds. Yep. All right, let's end that poll. Actually, you can display that. It's anonymized information. And we'll grab a screenshot of that for Bob and Charlie and send that over to them later as well. So lots of opportunity to learn about the company, a lot of 1s, 2s, and 3s in terms of familiarity with VTSI, and only 35% of the people attending here tonight are shareholders. So Did you get that? Here, there we go. Let's share those results. And Stephen, once you get a screenshot of that, we will move on. Stephen, we get to go?
Yep, we're good.
All right, let's give Bob Ferris the controls. Bob, thank you very much for joining us tonight. Real quick before he speaks, we got the chart up here for reference, a big picture view from 2002, so you get an idea where the company's at right now. And Bob, thank you very much for joining us tonight. I'll stop my share in case he has one. We see your screen. Don't hear you.
Okay. Can you hear me
There you
okay?
go. Yep.
Okay. And can you see the first slide?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, I really appreciate this opportunity to brief everyone on VirTra, ticker symbols VTSI. The company has been in business for about 27 years, but what really happened for us was in 2004, we invented the world's best training simulation environment. This picture here gives you an idea. This is our flagship product. It's a highly immersive police simulation, also can be used for military, but police is our largest client base. And this is unique in that it lets officers experience the life or death situations they could face, including riots, including domestic violence, including a host of very serious situations that you want to be a veteran at before you have your first encounter. The same kind of situation applies to military, and that's an enormous growth opportunity for our company. But with all of the riots and the headlines about police making an incorrect decision on use of force, this is where it is kind of ground zero. This is where the training occurs that prepares a police officer to make the right decisions and to have the capacity to not panic and potentially make a horrible decision that has enormous ramifications that can include riots, looting, and subsequent deaths afterwards. So VirTra is considered one of the world leaders. Really, when it comes to police training, we are the world leader in that area. Our product is, in a way, it's sort of like Apple in that it's an ecosystem. So once a customer buys from us, then and of course the forward-looking statements, I'm sure everyone on this call is familiar with that, but if not, I suggest you look that up on SEC website for forward-looking statements. But we have an extremely high customer retention rate. We've really had tremendous growth over the years on our top line revenue. And we are the type of company that 68% of Americans support additional training for police. So whether it's Democrat or Republican, we are a favorite of both, which is incredibly rare. We all have noticed how unusual it is for a Republican and Democrat to agree on something, especially in today's environment. They do agree on police training and increasing police training, and so that, I think, that underpins the enormous need for what we do. But I was mentioning that we're kind of an ecosystem like an Apple, because we even do driving simulators for police as well as military. But once they buy the simulator, they also often need training weapons, which we make the widest range of training weapons in the market. Simulated tasers, this saves them a lot of money because actual tasers cost tremendous amounts of money to train under. And then we have a patented threat device that allows them to actually feel pain during their training. That heightens the adrenaline and the nervousness and the stress which lowers it when they're actually in a life or death situation because they've had some training and some inoculation to it. And that is unique to VirTra. So the bottom line is that when federal government agencies or local or state police are thinking about what kind of product should we purchase, it is really VirTra that comes to the top of the list, and that includes internationally. We're probably the most distributed company internationally, hitting 33 countries recently, and there's growth opportunities there. The fundamental reason for a lot of this for VirTra is that we just have really really kind of outspent and outmaneuvered our competition. Because we began in 2004 with this technology, no one else copied us until they tried to copy us 12 years after we introduced our product. So in 2004, we were doing these high-end, immersive, realistic police simulators. And in the last several years, they've become more and more popular and essentially have become the de facto standard in our industry. And so that's one of the interesting trajectories of a company, is when you begin with an idea that starts to get a lot of converts and essentially revolutionizes the industry and becomes the standard. Right around the time it's becoming the standard is when you often see the biggest growth, because a lot of the laggards and the other people in the industry that have been waiting and holding on to the old technology and trying to save their money as much as they can, they realize that the time's up and that they actually gravitate to a now chosen leader in the market. And we believe we're entering that phase in the market. Part of the reason we believe that is because of the number of customers that have decided to use VirTra's product, to include Customs and Border Protection, the Secret Service. We have U.S. Marshals, we have Special Forces for military. A lot of the very top tier groups have all lined up and endorsed VirTra, some in very strong ways of actually giving us contracts to develop special versions of our software just for them. So we're in a strong commanding position. I don't believe that's reflected in our stock today, which means opportunity. And so I'd like to really open it up for questions, though, and so I don't want to take all the time on just talking about VirTra and what I think is important. So why don't we move into Q&A?
Great, thank you. Actually appreciate that. Short presentations, a lot of Q&A. So I'm going to get started. I have a few prepared questions from before, and then we'll open it up to the floor. You did mention the riot headlines, and I wanted to know from your perspective, when those headlines happen, you're in a group of stocks that do well. We saw that in the summer in the BLM Antifa riots, and then we saw it again around January 6th. Are these reactions fundamentally justified? Do you get more orders because of what's going on in the news like that?
So fundamentally justified is that's a bit tricky. The day that a riot occurs, is not normally mean that we get a bunch of calls. I think if we supplied riot gear, we would, but we're a bit more of an indirect consequence of people being fearful of, are people trained enough? Are we going to need more training? And it's a bit more of a preparation, which is still very positive. When a riot occurs, there's a ripple effect into communities that did not experience the riot, which is, of course, 99% of the rest of the communities. And sometimes they fear for a future riot. And so they will proactively prepare for that. Our sales cycle has been as short as under a couple hours, but that usually is the time when a government has expiring funds. So we're going to call and say, hey, we need a quote in 10 minutes. Because I need to go into a meeting, and in 2 hours I'll know if I'm buying or not. And so we get those, but that's usually around the end of a budget cycle. But what we see here is more of a fundamental shift of our society, placing a higher importance on training for those that have lethal force and those who have use of force, whether that be because there's concern of riots of large groups of people, or that's concern that police are indiscriminately killing minority citizens, the fact remains that they push towards higher levels of training, more investment in training, and that is absolutely directly tied to VirTra success.
Okay, great. So I'm going to stick on this line of questioning for just a little bit because it's really interesting to me. So can you, from what happened this summer with the riots we had in some of the big cities, have you seen, can you draw a straight line from those events to any increase in revenue now, 6 months later? And even, you can maybe speak to what happened January 6th and maybe the new administration, or, is there a different dynamic now that, there's a change of administration and now the other half of the country might be mad? I don't know. Like, is there any kind of relationships you've seen since the summer and again since January 6th that you can draw a direct line and say, hey, our revenue is increasing because of what's been taking place?
Direct lines are difficult, and we do, though, when we get sales inquiries in, we probe as to where they came from. However, that information is extremely sensitive, as you can imagine. That's information we don't want our competitors to have. So, but we do investigate where our leads are coming from and what is motivating an increase in our purchases. What I can point to is that our last financial showed an increase in our backlog that was not insignificant. And so I would point to that as evidence that there is increased demand for our products, whether that come from concern over police training or that come from concern over riots or unrest. As far as the new administration, I think the big story with the new administration with relation to VirTra is if they require more regulation. In many states around the country right now, people are shocked to hear that a barber requires training hours than a police officer requires, because a barber is using scissors and there's concern that the scissors might hurt someone. So they need special training. It's inconceivable to most people that police officers would not have far more required training than a hairstylist. But that's simply not the truth. So if the new administration represents an openness to more regulate police training, and some of that regulation would be, we need policies and we need to train people to follow the policies, and we need recurring training to keep people current with the very best practices to de-escalate situations with certified curriculum. Well, that whole system is what VirTra has invented and worked on, and we're the leader in the world at that. So we are the only simulation company in the world today that has certified curriculum for de-escalation. Let me say that again. We are the only company in the world that has certified national organization certified curriculum for de-escalation training in a simulator. And a simulator is important because you can't have people fill out a quiz on what they would do in a situation. You need to see them physically actually process what's going on and physically execute what they would actually do to see if they're dangerous or if they're doing a great job or where they need work. So the new administration might be more interested in saying what we've done so far is not adequate when it comes to training, and we're going to require a higher level of training going forward. And that could potentially have a seismic shift for the market that we serve, obviously.
Okay, perfect. I see lots of chats. So Rob, I'm going to let you manage all those and get some questions in, and I can circle back to me at the end. I might have a couple more.
No problem. So I'll be running through all the questions from chat. Or if anyone wants to speak in person, just raise your hand, click on participants, go to the bottom right of that screen, raise your hand, and you can speak in person. But I'll start with the first question from Neil Cohen. Which federal agencies presently use VirTra products?
Thank you for that question. So Customs and Border Protection is the largest by number agency, and they use VirTra exclusively. I don't believe they use any other simulation company. U.S. Marshals use VirTra, and they've been using us for the longest of any federal. Then we have service. So we have our simulators is actually in very well-known locations to help with the Secret Service training. And then we also have VTSI, which is the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center. They're one of the newer converts over to VirTra. They had previously used a competitor's product for many, many years. And I think just with all the other federal agencies standardizing around VirTra, it made sense for them to as well. VTSI is the premier law enforcement training center. I believe they train 65 or more different agencies. So they represent essentially almost all of the federal agencies that are medium or smaller in size, all trained through VTSI. And so that was a very powerful win that VirTra received fairly recently. That was a little over a year ago, and then we've had follow-on orders from them as well. So the federal government law enforcement, I think the one that we lack right now is the FBI, and we're working on that one. But pretty much all of the federal law enforcement agencies have really moved over and works with VirTra.
Sounds great. Thank you. And then the next question or comment was from Mark Gomes. He asked to ask about your operating leverage, and he says it's impressive.
Thank you. I appreciate that. We have a very conservative operating attitude, and that's done well by us for many years. We do at times understand the need to use leverage, but the opportunities need to be there. We don't do deals just to do deals, and we try to very carefully utilize the funds. We have a little bit of a unique background in that when I took over as CEO, we had debt, and we needed to move outside of that. We ended up not raising any money, but we just decided that we would make profit from our operations, and that would fund us. And so our heritage and our DNA is built around, if we want to earn more money, then we need to sell product at a profit, and so that's also allowed us to have one of the cleanest capital structures for any company our size. We've actually bought back our shares of stock over the years, and we're able to, we have money in the bank, and we don't need to go out and raise funds. Now we are open to doing that if the opportunity presents itself. We have seen a couple opportunities, and one of them we were kind of beat to the punch by another group. We monitored that anyway because we were so serious about doing that acquisition. And now it's, I think, 3 years post when we wanted to do the acquisition, and we were just second in line. And that acquisition would have been enormously successful. So that was good news, bad news. Bad news, we were second in line. Good news is if we had actually leveraged for that particular opportunity, it would have been a handsome reward. But you win some, you lose some.
Yeah, you can't get them all, but it's glad to hear you have great operating leverage. Another question for Neil Cohen. It's customer specific, so you might not be able to answer it, but he asks, how about FLETC? Does the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center in Georgia use VirTra?
Yes, absolutely. They are one of the newer, that's the group I was just mentioning, FLETC, FLETC. They use VirTra simulators now, but that's relatively new. I think it's about a year and a half now that they've been using VirTra, and we announced an add-on continuation contract with them, I think maybe 6 months ago. They're a great customer, and they're the customer that actually has so many 65 or more different agencies go through doors. So they're almost like a demonstration center for VirTra, an enormous demonstration center where these folks from other agencies go through, and then when they go back to their home station, they many times will say, hey, we need to get a VirTra simulator. I just trained on one, but I need to keep training. I can't just train once a year at VTSI or once every 2 years. And so I need to, we need to continue to update our training and update our skills. So now VTSI is an enormous potential for our company. And the fact we've been there a short period of time means that the best is yet to come. A lot of the upside for our VTSI relationship is not baked into our stock price right now.
That sounds great. The next question we have is from Sanjay. Could you please speak to your sales process? Do you have to sell to every police department individually?
Not always, and sometimes we're able to do a statewide program through the legislature, and so that's our preferred method when we can. But there are times when we do sell to the police agency. Now, many times a lot of the sales is already done through our reputation of having great service, or they saw us at they got a chance to see our simulator at another state police agency. So many times they're already potentially serious about buying VirTra since we are the leading brand. One thing I could have mentioned in the intro is during this time with all the seriousness of the headlines and the rioting and police scrutiny, you can imagine no city manager wants to stand in front of a courtroom or in front of a camera, a TV camera, and say, listen, I bought the cheapest simulation technology I could find. Our police officers are trained worse than any other police officers in the nation. I insured that, and I saved this city $40,000. I should be heralded a hero. There's just not one out there that I believe would ever want that. And in fact, most city managers and attorney generals and police chiefs would rather be in a position to say, I bought the industry leader. It costs a little more. The training is leaps and bounds beyond all the others. In fact, it's the only certified system I could find. And yeah, we spent a little more on it, but I tell you, the training for our officers is too important. Public safety is too important. This should be something that politicians pick up on and actually show off how much they support training in the months and years to come. And I would love to see a politician embrace this because it does make a whole lot of sense.
Definitely agree with you. A lot of the stuff that happened in the Capitol showed that in very intense situations, it's hard for people to respond correctly without the proper training.
Exactly. That's exactly right. You don't raise to the occasion, you fall to the level of training you've had. And you've got to have that training so high that when you fall to the level of training, it exceeds what you're facing.
Good. Another question from Sanjay, and I had the same question. Do you incorporate augmented reality or virtual reality in your training? And if not, do you plan to do so in the future?
So actually, our very first products for this market were virtual reality products. And due to the accuracies needed for marksmanship training and in order to make sure we simulated firearms and tasers correctly, we ended up going to a screen-based system. Our software is flexible enough to where we could take our software and move it to augmented reality or XR, and that is certainly a potential for us. We have not yet released a product in that area, but most people in our market would very much expect VirTra because we actually have the longest record of any company in our market for VR headsets. We did our first VR headset project in 1993. I don't believe there's even another company who was doing headsets in 1993 that's still around today. So we have a long legacy in the VR AR side. I've spoken at VR conferences in the 1990s. I've been called a godfather of VR by journalists. So we have a deep history of virtual reality. In fact, in the 90s, we we made products in which we did 500,000 people each summer. We had products inside of theme parks where we were doing virtual reality theme park systems. So actually our first decade as a company, we learned all about how to handle virtual reality and augmented reality technologies during that time. So we very much have a potential to return to that. There's some really good products coming out, but some of it is not quite ready for the certified level of training and the high level of training that we have at VirTra. It's got to be worth putting the VirTra name on it. We have to be able to stand behind it on the side of training value. And when that day occurs, then we will be releasing a VR AR product.
That makes sense. Thank you. Yeah, as I was watching your presentation, I was like, where's the virtual reality? And then as soon as you said you need shooting accuracy, I'm like, oh, that makes sense. That's why you.
That's exactly right. Just one little degree off means the difference. If you're training someone to shoot a hostage taker and avoid shooting a hostage, that 1/10 of a degree even could mean the difference between the simulator telling you that you hit your target versus you actually hitting the hostage. So we want to do no harm. And so the last thing we want to do is have somebody think that they have skills from our simulation and actually be incorrect skills, and then they go into the real world and do something incorrect. So we don't want that. Makes sense.
The next question is from Steve Fine. And are the majority of revenue stream decisions made at the local, county, or city level? And what percentage of funding comes from federal government to support state and local?
That is very dependent on the locale. It's really kind of shocking how different every group is. Some are very controlled by a city council. Some are controlled heavily by the police chief. Some are controlled by the training director. There are grants that come from the federal government. Those seem to somewhat be hit or miss. But we do have staff that helps with as much as they can legally help with any grant writing. So we look at all of those avenues. We have an extremely hungry sales and marketing team, and part of the reason they're so hungry is we firmly believe that if an officer is able to train with a VirTra system, they are able to have the best chance to make the correct decision and make it home at night. They have the best chance to protect the public and protect their own life. And so it's not just a matter of just generating more revenue for VirTra. It's a matter of giving them every advantage and knowing that our competitors' products, where they've not invested in money like we have, they're just so inferior that they actually are endangering lives. So I know it sounds strange, but there's a motivation beyond money that occurs at VirTra.
That makes sense. Next question is from Robert Marmerstein. Any recurring revenue? And if so, what percentage of the total?
Great question. Recurring revenue at VirTra shows up in two ways. We've not separated these out explicitly in our latest financials. And of course, I need to stay within the confines of what we have publicly announced. But to answer the question recurring, there's two major elements. One is we obviously, as a manufacturer of unique equipment, we have warranties that are often renewed, and we have recurring revenue that comes in the form of software updates, new scenarios, things like that. So those are listed in our revenue. They do fluctuate from quarter to quarter based on our overall sales, but they're not. It's not insignificant. I don't know the exact percentage or if we've broken that out. The other part of recurring revenue that's very important to bring up. VirTra has about 18 months ago, we introduced a new program where we called the STEP program, which is a subscription training equipment partnership where we will put the simulator at the location and they pay a monthly or quarterly fee for the use of the simulator, and we maintain it and keep it operational. They have to commit to 1 year for that program, and then it auto renews unless they want to cancel at the end of the year. So that is a relatively new program. We are the only simulation company in the world that I know of that does this program for law enforcement. That program, we also did it, we priced it in a way to have it competitive in the marketplace. So in other words, where Adobe did a wholesale shift of their entire business into a force subscription, we decided, and partly because of government contracting, we needed to have both avenues available. Because what we find is if the agency has a grant and they have to purchase it, then they want to purchase, or if they've gone through the ranks and gotten approval to purchase, they want to purchase. But others have told us, hey, I want to buy you, I'm planning to buy your system in 2 years. And we say, well, we have the STEP program, and we've had people say, well, I can buy it in 2 weeks if it's a subscription. And they actually bought it within 2 weeks, like they said. So the subscription is an alternate method where an agency that's light on cash can get our simulator, and then they just pay over time. And so that's an avenue that we've introduced. It is, you can see we have a line item for the depreciation of those assets, so you can kind of get a gauge of how that's doing, and it has been steadily growing. It's not a major piece of our revenue yet, but our sales team likes it, and we do think it has great potential in the future.
No, that does sound like a good sales process.
Every tool, give salespeople the best tools available.
Some people may say, I can't afford this, and then you show them that, and they're like, oh, okay, I guess I'm going with you guys.
You're right, and it can be sometimes a quicker process because government agencies sometimes have quite a bit of hoops they have to jump through, and if we can reduce those or give them an alternate path, it can be very powerful.
Makes sense. The next question is from Ashley Day. As revenues grow, how are cost of goods and SG&A affected? Does the company need to add personnel or investment to scale up from there?
Generally, we've been pretty resistant on this side where we've in past quarters, if you took time to see when we've had big swings of revenue going up, we have not had correspondingly large swings of S. Obviously, there's some SG&A increase when there's a large ramp, but very, very minor. And I think that has to do with just the fact that a lot of times we are, our equipment is often, when we're selling simulators, we are taking computers and screens and projectors and cabling and very special software and very special content, and we're putting that together. And so many times in that environment, we're able just to order more, and we just run later into the night with production. And so we can hire if we have to hire, if we need more hands, we can hire some temporary help there. So generally speaking, we've been pretty good. Now, what we've had over the years is the steady growth year after year. So for 14 years in a row, this company that you're learning about tonight has grown its top line revenue without fail. 14 years in a row. And at no time did we have a major injection of private equity cash. And at no time did we merge with another entity. So pure organic growth, 14 years, even when we had huge sales, when we had 1 year where we had Customs and Border Protection give us a $6 million order, still the following year we exceeded that previous year. So.
Yeah, that is very rare for a small company. Then another question from Sanjay. Are there any data to support that VirTra training improves results?
That's a highly insightful person. That's a key question. So there are we've had customers do case studies on their, and I think some of them are required to do case studies, but sadly, a lot of those case studies are incredibly secretive. They're held close to the vest for liability reasons. So even if they showed an improvement, they don't want it. They don't want that information released. So we often are not, even if there's data out there about the improved skills, we're not able to release it. I know I had one client tell me that there was an improvement of skills of 62%. And I said, well, that's tremendous. Let me post that. And he's like, no. I don't want people knowing that our staff was at a level where they needed 62% of improvement. We are working on getting more numeric data, like having actual studies done so that we have more numeric data. What often happens is a lot of the agencies will send a veteran police officer that they trust their judgment implicitly, and they will analyze the simulation companies and what they offer. And then that expert decides on VirTra and writes up an explanation of why they feel, based on all their experience, that the threat-fire device is helpful and this scenario package is helpful, and they're explaining why they're highly confident that the skills will improve using our tools. But the other part is the certified curriculum is also helpful for a lot of folks that are questioning, is this effective? Will this really help the skills improve? And we do have a lot of anecdotal evidence on that. But
yeah, 62% is a massive change. I'll add a follow-on question. Did you mention that people were more relaxed in the real situation after being in the simulator? Did you ever take any measurements on that?
I think the best thing I could do on this is give you a short story. I received a letter from a person who had gone through our training, and he was relatively new to the force, and about a week later, he explained this situation. He pulled a gentleman over. The gentleman jumped out of his car. He jumped out of his car and shouted at the gentleman to get back into the car. The guy turned towards him and started walking towards him, ignoring every command he shouted. He shouted louder. He realized that he was now at a point where the policy would allow him to shoot and kill this man because he had violated enough items that he could potentially do that action. It turns out that the man was just death. But the officer said that he had the calm and the presence to not shoot, even though the person was defying everything he said and was confusing him on why he was doing what he was doing. But he said, because I went through your simulator and I went through different environments, I had a sense of what it would be like if things went horribly wrong. And I want to thank you that I didn't end that man's life.
Yeah, that's amazing. Wow.
Thank you for sharing that. That was very, very nice.
And we do still have a lot more questions on the log.
Yeah.
Do you want to stop at some point, Ben, or?
We were supposed to usually stop a quarter of. Bob, did he want to take a few more minutes, or?
Yeah, I can. If you have the time, I'm willing to take these are some of the best questions I've ever faced. So I'd like more if I can.
Okay, so we're gonna go a little overtime tonight, guys, since there seems to be a lot of interest. So go for it, Rob.
Okay. So another question from Stephen Zygmunt, or a question. I noticed that there's a backlog for your simulators. How long does it take to produce them?
We are able to produce simulators. Sometimes we have them in stock on the shelf. Other times, if we have to produce them from scratch, we can get some done in sometimes as short as 2 weeks, depending on availability of some parts. The backlog that we show has more to do with clients and COVID than anything else. So we have clients that say, listen, I don't deliver my product until 4 months from now because I'm building a room for it. Or we have clients who say, listen, I have a lockdown right now in place. I can't have you guys traveling and working on site. That's the big driver of our backlog. There are also a few items in the backlog, like we have government agencies that sometimes buy a 5-year warranty up front. I said that correctly. They buy 5 years of warranty at time of purchase. Well, we're not allowed to take all of that revenue. So some of that revenue gets put in a backlog, and we basically pull off, recognize revenue off of that over the period of time of performance. So there's some other items in backlog but the main issue is really COVID and ability to get the products installed so long as the customer is willing. We have the staff. We went from 2 installers to I think we're at 19 or 17 of the installation staff, production staff. So we fluctuate that based on our need, but we're able to install a lot of equipment so long as they're willing.
Got it. Thank you. So another question from Robert Marmerstein. How many employees were LY versus this year's forecast?
So LY, we were at 96 for 2021. That's a tough question. We have proposals in, and we are awaiting word back on various jobs that could highly influence that. So it seems like we continually are ticking up on employee size, and that's just proportional to the business that we add on. I will say we're generally a bit conservative, where we don't take on a team of 20 or 30 people hoping that the business will someday materialize around us. But at the same time, sometimes you need to lean forward, and we've done that in the past and many times that's benefited us greatly. But yeah, we budget conservative, but then we adjust budgets based on what happens. So we're eager to see the outcome of a lot of interesting jobs that could occur in 2021 for us.
Sounds good. Another question from Ashley Day. How is the dialogue progressing with the military? It sounds like a large opportunity.
Yes, things are proceeding very well with the military, and yeah, we're very excited. We're hoping for some breakthrough in 2021, but a lot of that is somewhat outside of our control. But we've made some very good inroads, and frankly, it's a situation of we have some of the technology and products that are highly desirable by the military. So it's nothing more than them doing well by themselves. Them getting a product that makes tons of sense for them is all that we're talking about. And I'm hopeful that will be occurring.
Would you need to make different simulation software or test simulations for the military if you got them as a customer?
So one big interest one big need the military has is in drop-in recoil kits for their firearms. That's an area where they're interested in. That's an area that VirTra is a real leader in. And so in that kind of situation, it would be more making sure that whatever drop-in kits are requested are ones that VirTra is able to supply. And then there could be, if they did want our software, because we have ballistically accurate software for marksmanship, we have the world's leading use of force de-escalation software that can be applied to law enforcement or military situations. So if they had those kind of needs, then yes, there might need to be some modifications of what we've already built on. We did announce, so we are continuing in 2021 with the Admire project that was announced publicly. And that is through the Air Force, but that is to benefit the Department of Defense at large. That can benefit Army, Marines, and others. So So that project is what you just mentioned. I think it was Robert, where it's a tweaking of the software, tweaking the software to the military needs. So we're actually already under contract for that. So.
Okay. Another question from Sanjay. How do you develop your training curriculum? Do you source best practices and procedures?
So we do it a couple ways. One is we hire some of the best subject matter experts we can find. And the other thing we do is we partner with the leading experts in the world in different areas. So, for example, we work with Force Science Institute, and they're recognized as one of the world leaders in the timing of a human processing situations with police and use of force situations. They've done tons of research of just how fast the brain can process a threat and how quickly the brain can process de-escalation. So, if you point a gun at me and then you throw the gun to the ground, my brain takes time to process situations. And so they've done great breakthrough on that, and they train a lot of officers about the psychological and neurological impact of a use of force encounter. And so we will work with them. They have 30 plus years of experience in that field. And so those partnerships, and then and that's just one, I'm just giving one example, but those partnerships that are tremendous, because we then use that, create scenarios, and our clients get the benefit of these world-leading experts. And so one of the other differences that VirTra has over our competition.
Sounds good. I was thinking about a question you answered before about kind of the deaf guy walking up to the police officer. And I think there's another side to that too. If police are more relaxed around people that aren't relaxed, it makes them more relaxed. So probably save some of the police as well.
Yeah. Very true.
So I have a question from Ryan Spence. What does the revenue model look like? Is the simulator hardware screens itself typically bought or leased? And is there a recurring subscription for the training content?
So most of our business today is that we sell the product, and sometimes they buy a 2, 3, 4, 5-year warranty with the time they buy it. Other times they just buy it and comes with a 1-year warranty. And so that's most of our revenue. We have been able to get recurring revenue off of our clients because of their need for warranty and additional software and whatnot. So, and the fact they've been happy with the product and they want to continue to use it. We have introduced a recurring model where it's a subscription where they pay no upfront fee, and they just pay monthly or quarterly for a 12-month span. And so that's a subscription model that we introduced fairly recently. So we're hoping to grow that recurring revenue piece. But yes, there is a need for upgraded software. There's a need for updated content. One year we added we were able to work with a major Cineplex, and there was a shooting at a movie, an active shooter situation, and so we recreated that type of situation and added that to our library. So a lot of departments wanted to have that available because it's unbelievably expensive for them to try to do that themselves. And once they have the simulator, they just need the software, the piece of content to be able to recreate what would cost them, maybe $100,000 to try to pull off, to try to rent out an entire Cineplex. Although I know today not many people are going to the movies, but that's still in the library for training. So.
Okay. Rob, I think we're gonna close it out with a couple questions from Mark and myself.
No problem.
Mark, he's joined us, so thank you for handling all those questions. Mark, why don't you go first?
Can you hear me?
1 second.
I can.
Let me unmute you. Go ahead.
Great. So, no, I can just speak through your speaker right here. It's good. So, your company is one of my larger positions. We've spoken a few times, and I think one thing that I didn't hear on this presentation so far is, the risk is very low with your company. You're a growing company. You've been around for a long time. So I think the downside risk is that you just keep doing what you've been doing. But the upside, right, is that there's a change, a seismic shift, an inflection point in how the country views the importance of law enforcement training. And all of a sudden you see a large influx in growth and revenue. So the question was really, let's say you have an incremental $10 million of revenue that comes in. Based on the fact that a lot of your assets are soft assets, the content that you've built over years and years and years is very high margin, right? So assuming 10 million of business came in, approximately how much would you expect to drop to the bottom line?
Well, of course, the makeup of that revenue is important, but it would be higher than most any other company. I mean, there's a few out there that have a leverage like we do in the model, but it could be pretty sizable, yeah.
Right. So, and we take your shares outstanding into account, your EPS could multiply.
Yeah.
Pretty quickly.
It could. I think that's one angle that people are looking at. Like you said, the downside risk is rather limited, and the upside could be quite attractive from the sales standpoint. The other thing some people look at is that we are in kind of a sweet spot for potential acquisition, that you could have a large defense contractor want to buy up somebody that has both a foot in the military side and a big presence in the policing side, because many times they like to have some diversity outside of just the DoD budget, and police gives a lot of nice diversity there. You could also have a police tech companies can do quite well. I think Axon proves some of that. And so there's some interest, there's some potential that there could be interest. So there's also okay, this is a kind of company that could be acquired someday, and we're open to that, but only if the opportunity presents itself. Right now, we're head down, totally trying to push our revenue up and get the best training in as many hands as we can.
Right. So, and right, with a market cap of $30 million, just the cost synergies, eliminating certain sales, marketing, administrative cost of being public could almost pay for the acquisition at this current valuation, thus accruing to the premium that they would be willing to pay for your company.
Yeah, that's a solid analysis. Yeah.
Right. And with 8 million shares outstanding, if just 4 million of that 10 million drops the bottom line, that's 50 cents of additional EPS.
Yep. Very, very true. And yep. So no, you're absolutely right. And you actually, there's some proof to what you're saying. If you look back, I think it was, we had a quarter where we had a lot of revenue get recognized, and exactly what you're saying is what happened. Just a huge amount of profit dropped to the bottom line.
Great, thank you, Bob. That's a great lead into my very last question, is if you can let us know what kind of vested interest you have in the company and kind of what your aspirations or goals are in terms of share price or market cap for yourself here.
Well, our goal at VirTra is to hit $50 million of revenue a year. That's a goal that we've had. That's a goal that we've made a lot of progress towards. We set that goal when our annual revenue was $2.5 million. We set the $50 million goal. So we've made a lot of strides towards it. I think we're at we're at a high multiple of where we started. So that continues to be our goal. And my ownership position, I believe, is around I think around 5% is my ownership. So.
You know, Bob, by my calculations, if you guys did 50 million in revenue, you could do over $1.50 of EPS.
You know, that could be. I don't want to. Yeah, don't want to make promises, except that we have a lot of talented people working to make those kind of dreams a reality. You know, we not only want to make that a reality, but we also want to make the world a safer place, you know, save lives and improve lives where we can. And we have a very unique opportunity to do that, and have been very blessed that so many top tier agencies, federal law enforcement agencies, some of the most highly recognized groups that exist in the world of law enforcement and military have gravitated to our offerings. It's a huge honor, but you know, I do appreciate those investors that see the value of what we do, understand the credibility of the people who have picked our product already, and see the future that could bring about. So appreciate everyone spending some time to learn about us.
Great, thank you, Bob. Thank you so much for the generous allocation of time tonight. We do have a VTSI research group we just opened up for our VIP members. Stephen, if you can drop that link into the VIP group in WhatsApp or in the chat here. Also, we want to close it out with the post poll. If you can launch that real quick, so we can send this information over to Bob and also Charlie from the IR department. Yep, there's a poll. So please participate in this. Again, after today's presentation, how's your opinion of VTSI changed? And after today's presentation, would you consider buying more shares of VTSI? That's all anonymous data that we're going to share with Bob and their investor relations department. So after we take a minute to we'll keep that up, I'm going to advance my next slide. I want to let everyone know we do have our trade of the week, which we'll do quickly after this. But for our guests that are coming from Mark's Pro Room, I want to let you know our agenda. Next week, we have Aaron Warwick presenting MLSS. We also have John Lupton of Lupton Capital come in. And we had such a great outcome with Dan Carlson from Tailwinds Research, because he gave us his top 3 stocks. So I made sure, I've been working with Lupton Capital for a couple of weeks, and I'm like, John, give us your 3 best stocks. We have a really VIP community here that is making a ton of money, and we're only going to accept your top picks. So stay tuned next week for John Lupton's top 3 picks from Lupton Capital. Then Wednesday, February 17th, we got the CEO of Rewalk, Larry Jasinski. A lot of you expressed interest in that, so I reached out to them and I made that happen. So if you're not a member yet, we also have our Wednesday 4:30 p.m. happy hours. If you're not a member yet, please jump over to storytrading.com. This is a great value just for $25 a month. Honestly, it's ridiculous we give it away for this price. We plan to eventually increase that to $99 a month, probably shortly after our app is released in July. So please hop on, join our VIP community, and you can gain the benefit of getting all these exclusive presentations. So thank you very much, everyone, for that. And for those of you who want to stick around, we're going to jump over to our trade of the week.